Well, here we go with Chris Landry. I'm Dave Hooker. It's Chalk Talk brought to you by Owl's Nest Barbecue. If you like the video, please click the thumbs up button. We greatly appreciate the likes, subscribes, and shares. That helps us bring you more Tennessee and SEC coverage. And wow, what a weekend in the SEC, in particular for Tennessee. Chris, you and I, this is why they play the games. Had the conversation of I can't see a way in which South Carolina beats Tennessee, but they not only beat the Vols, but they beat them pretty badly. And just your thoughts initially on the game as Tennessee now out of the college football playoff hunt, and that stings for a lot of people in my area.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And look, there's always a chance, and it's why you said, it's why you play the games. When you look at it, and you look at it from, or when I look at it from a technical standpoint and personnel standpoint, yeah, you don't really see a lot of these things happening, but they do happen. And people say, off the time I get asked, well, what's going to be the shocker of the weekend? I'm like, well, if I knew, it wouldn't be a shocker. I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise. It's what makes sports unique. You never know what can happen. And yeah, anything can happen. And we've seen it happen time and time again. I think there are a couple of things. I think a 30,000 foot view tells me that this is another indication of when you are the team that's the hunted, when you win and you win a lot and you're in contention, the games become bigger. For you, you got more pressure, you got more at stake. And then the opponent, they really are gunning for you. It makes their season. I mean, they haven't had a really good win at South Carolina all year long. This is the biggest win in Shane Beamer's coaching career.
No doubt.
I mean, just boom. I mean, he will get a lot of play for this, and they deserve, the win. But my point is this is what you face when you're really good. And I think this is what people maybe don't see and understand is you take for granted what the Alabamas, what Georgia's doing right now, other teams that are Ohio State has to go through it. I mean, all those teams have a more difficult task than it seems. Oh, that they just beat that team. They're not really good. That doesn't mean anything. They're getting gunned for all the time. Tennessee got a little taste of that. And they didn't handle the situation well. It also, the thing that came out is how vulnerable Tennessee is, which I believe they're vulnerable because they're so lopsided as a team, meaning they're unlevel. They're a team that's very, very good in what they do, but they're not a well-balanced team in that they can't win games strictly with a defense if they need to. They can't slow down the tempo on offense and grind the clock for 6-minute drives and protect their defense, which is not very good, keeping them off the field. They can't win but in that way because they're not very well balanced. Now, I thought that was going to catch up to them once they got to the playoffs. I firmly admit that I didn't expect South Carolina to get them. I thought that they would play with the same way that they play. Even though it was on the road at night, that there was no way that South Carolina offensively could pull this upset off. I didn't expect South Carolina to have a game in which they did not have all year long. I mean, if you think about it, Spencer Rattler had 8 touchdown passes all year long. He gets, 6 in one game? They have 18 offensive scores all year long. They had 9 against Tennessee. That is, I don't know that I've seen anything that just obtuse that just says, wow, how could you? I mean, that is just completely irrational from what they have been. So to me, it was not that, well, Tennessee couldn't get upset. I just didn't see it happening by South Carolina, quite frankly, but because I didn't see South Carolina putting up that type of a matchup. They hit throws that I could not believe that they were hitting. I mentioned to you earlier that Spencer Rattler's had about 4 throws all year long that we call in the scouting and coaching profession. We use another technical term, but we call it wow throws. mean, like, wow, I can't believe they pulled that off. He had 13 of them against Tennessee. 13. So even when Tennessee was in a position to make a play, he was making throws like out of his mind. It was like the player on in basketball that's shooting everything up. He's not, he averages 6 points a game and he scores 30 because he's just hitting everything from threes and raining it down. Spencer Rattler has physical gifts, but he's not displayed them like that. But I went back and looked in my film grade notes. Only one other time would be close to this, and that was the before he got benched at Oklahoma against a really weak opponent. So this was really out of the blue for me. I didn't see them playing that well, and then you combine that with a Tennessee defense that's not been good all year long, but was exceedingly bad in this game, which got no pass rush pressure, which only contributed to the bad coverage, and then you get them making all sorts of plays. All of that contributed to an unbelievable performance in what is, man, that's why we watch it. I'm sitting there watching it, Dave, live. I went back and looked at the tape, but I'm watching it live, and I've got 6 games that I monitor at one time, and it's over there monitor 4, which means I'm watching it. But it quickly moved to monitor 2 very quick because I'm like, whoa, this is not what I was expecting.
Nope, me neither. Also was not expecting, obviously Hendon Hooker to suffer an ACL injury, and God bless that young man and all he's been through, and it's such a great story. But Chris, as we move forward, Joe Milton, uh, you talk about physical ability. Where does he rank among the most physically gifted quarterbacks that you maybe ever seen? I've visited with people that swear hand to the sky that he can throw the ball 85 plus yards. Doesn't mean you're a great quarterback, but it means you got some physical gifts.
Yeah, he throws it with velocity without trying to throw it with velocity. It's matter of fact, it's a negative because I think the ball just accelerates. To me, he reminds me a lot physically of Jamarcus Russell. It just just the ball comes out and it was like woof. He doesn't have any softness or finesseness to his throws. But what I'm curious to see, and we've seen him, sprinklings of snaps from him, some enough to make a tape and look at him and watch him these games, but not enough to put it together with a game plan. How does he react? How does he respond? Can he consistently make accurate throws? And look, we've had a run of Hendon Hooker since very early last season. And what are we going to see out of Joe Milton? And that's make it quite a bit different. I'm saddened that Hendon Hooker can't finish the season because without him, this season is not what this season has been for Tennessee. It's pure and simple. It's about Hendon Hooker. It's about the receivers. It's about the offensive line. It's about the offenses which made all this work. And he was the flag bearer for this. And for him not to be there is very, very unfortunate. And while maybe people think all is lost with the loss last week, I mean, it's really bad, Dave. I don't even want to go there, but could you imagine if that game would have been close and maybe Tennessee wins it and then they lose Hendon Hooker like they did, and they let's say they beat South Carolina, and now they're going into it without him. That would have been, now I think people are resolved, maybe unhappily so, that the playoffs are out of reach, and now you're looking at can they beat Vanderbilt? Can they win a bowl game? And it's almost, okay, can Joe Milton do it? Could you imagine if the rest of their season counted on it? Then we'd be having a different conversation of how this is going to affect them. Is it going to affect them in the playoff race? There's all sorts of questions there. So that came into my mind when I feared that Hendon Hooker looked like it might be a serious injury. But I'm very curious to see what Joe Milton does. They're going to be playing a a team that's playing with some confidence and would love nothing more to stick it to Tennessee, obviously down in the mid-state. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this affects their offense, or how effective can they be in this next matchup and in the bowl game. In the bowl game.
Chris, since pardon me, since you excuse me, and since you and I last talked, and Chris joins us a couple times a week on our daily show at 8:30, so be sure and check it out. Hit that like and subscribe button. I want to remind you that this is brought to you by Owl's Nest Barbecue. Owl's Nest Barbecue has the sauces and the rubs that are just unbelievable. They've got the Green Mountain Grill, and also I like when you walk in, they say, "What do you like? What kind of barbecue do you like?" And they have the expertise to point you in the right direction. Makes it really simple. We don't like wandering around, and they'll take care of you at Owl's Nest Barbecue. Also, don't forget about Steve Ray's Midnight Oil, a proud Michelin distributor, and those Green Mountain Grills are fantastic. But um, Chris, I've been told by a couple of other people since you and I last spoke, and that is, I mean, there definitely was an altercation between Hendon
Mhm.
Hooker and Jeremy Banks. There's no question about that now. I didn't think there was any question as of Sunday when I wrote it, or I wouldn't have written it.
Right.
So, but even more confirmation. I mean, how does that happen with so much at stake, and how does Tennessee make sure that they put that behind them? Because you have a Vanderbilt team that suddenly looks a lot better than they did 3 weeks ago. You have a potential for a 10-win season and a bowl destination that could be really good or kind of good. So, how does it happen? How does Tennessee put it behind them?
Well, how does it happen? Is
Bunch of
it's hard to
22,
answer. It's hard to answer.
20-year-old alpha males is probably how it happens.
Well, yeah. I mean, it happens a lot. I mean, but see, and I don't know all the details. Be honest with you. I mean, I know there was an altercation, and I've heard kind of maybe what led to. But I think that how does it get to the point to where it leads to a suspension of a player is a good question. In that, you know, tempers escalate, and you make a decision as a coach. I'm a little bit surprised because I wasn't there and not in the locker room or wherever it happened. I don't know how it escalates that big. I don't know how it wasn't handled maybe a little bit better internally, or maybe it couldn't, and maybe this is the only thing they could have done. That is a little bit confusing to me, and it's hard to answer because I'm not there. I've been in many a situations where there's been locker room incidences or things that have happened that become combative, and you deal with it. Why this couldn't be handled to the point where it clearly led to that, I really don't know. But let me just say this: that didn't affect how well South Carolina played.
Amen. Amen.
It may have had an effect on Tennessee's attitude. I did mention to you earlier that when I watched the play early, I didn't see good play by Tennessee, but I didn't see lack of effort. Now, by the end of the game, later in the game, after South Carolina had all those possessions, that defensive front of Tennessee's was dead. That's, as they got worn down as the game went along. So I don't know. I mean, they weren't worn out at the beginning, and I didn't think they played well, but I mean, just so people understand that when you have a situation like that, a team just doesn't quit unless you've got a real major problem. And I didn't see good play. I didn't see good quit. I didn't see quit. You know what I mean? There's a difference.
Yeah.
So here's what I would say is, and I mentioned also earlier that if there's a problem, like a major problem, like, okay, this is an issue. It happened. Is it isolated? Is it a sign of further problems in the locker room? Again, everyone's going to want to speculate to that because, oh my God, how could we possibly lose to South Carolina? Because we're just the greatest. No, it just, that's trying to come up with an explanation other than the fact that you got beat by a team that played really better than you did and exposed some of the things that you're limited in as a team. What I would be concerned of more is if this team craters and gives up and doesn't play with any fight or heart against Vanderbilt or in the bowl game, and there's like massive guys leaving. And I mean, you're gonna have guys leaving the portal and come in every year, but if there's like maybe, I think we'll see that down the road. So we're gonna see if this is like a systemic problem. Is it a locker room issue? Locker room issue, Dave, is not two guys fighting or disagreeing. A locker room issue is when there is a significant dissension about how things are done, and there's like one side against another, and it's almost like two different teams. That's a locker room issue. I don't know that to be the case. I don't know it not to be the case. I think people are trying to speculate in this day and age. That's what people do. The incident clearly happened. I've heard things. You've got more in tune on what happened than I did, and what led to it, perhaps. Why it escalated to where it led to one guy getting suspended, because they are not sitting Mr. Banks down unless there's a one heck of a good reason why. I mean, they just didn't just do that just because. Well, we're gonna.
That's not just a shoving match or escalated voices.
No. There's more to it than that, and that there's a reason why they did it, and I just know that from experience without knowing. They don't just say, you know what, we're just gonna do that. That's not good. Now, is there a problem in the locker room because maybe some people, like a lot of them, felt like Banks was not in the wrong and somebody else was? Yeah, that could be. I've seen that happen before, but I don't know that to be the case. I just think that people are reacting to. Look, if there's a problem, Dave, it didn't just happen. This is like the incident was the final straw of something that's been festering. So if it's been a problem, I mean, it didn't affect them against Missouri. It didn't affect them against Florida. It didn't. I mean, this didn't happen overnight. Now, the suspension might have surprised some folks, and maybe some other guys. It may have bothered them, but I think the whole that's the. And you're not saying this, but I know that's kind of out there. Well, that's a reason why you might start off slow. It might be a reason why but that's not what caused the result. The result was a byproduct of, again, somebody stopped this offense a little bit, and the defense couldn't get off the field. I don't know that I see that. And you miss Banks, but that's the best thing without really knowing the depth of the problem potentially. I don't really know.
In the end, Tennessee fans, especially this time of the year, should be thankful that Tennessee is 9-2, can win 10 games, and one of those games was against Alabama. One of those wins was against Alabama. One was against Florida. That's what people should focus on. It'll take some time. It'll take some perspective, and I understand that, but that's what they need to do. And we're thankful of Alice Nest Barbecue and Steve Ray's Midnight Oil. Again, Alice Nest Barbecue has the Green Mountain Grill, and it is phenomenal. It's got the wood pellets, and you can set up the timer, and you're good to go. That is Owl's Nest Barbecue and Steve Ray's Midnight Oil, a proud Michelin distributor. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook